Hello and welcome to the shop. This week we're going to take some Ambrosia maple. It's fairly dry, it's not bad, but we're going to see what kind of a little hollow form or vase we can come up with. I'm going to do a little bit of discussion about different hollowing devices when I get into here, and I want to preface that with a disclaimer. I don't own a lot of the bells and whistles. Probably the most exciting hollowing device I do use is the one-way termite, and this is a very effective little device. However, I'm learning more and more as I'm getting a little older that there are some steadying type devices out there for hollowing that might make for a little bit of an easier time and a little bit of safer time. So I really encourage you to investigate some of those. Sam Angelo over at Wyoming Woodturner has a really neat roller system that locks your hollowing tool in and gives it good steady support, so all you have to do is move it around. That's a pretty cool tool and something that I am investigating for my own personal use and safety. Carbide is always a question that people bring up when it comes to hollowing, and we're going to talk a little bit about carbide. I do own carbide tools. The one that I use the most is the Swan Neck Hollower, but I'm also working on, I have in progress a shop-made Swan Neck Hollower out of high-speed steel, and we might incorporate some of the construction of that tool in this video. However, it's made for very small pieces for hollowing ornaments specifically, so it won't be able to put that into effect on this particular piece. But I'll show it to you. I'll give you a little bit of video of it, and we can discuss that as we go along. So what I'm going to do is get this set up between centers, get a tenon on one side, probably this side, and then get it mounted into the chuck, and we'll do a little shaping on the outside, and then we'll work on some hollowing. Okay, as you can see, I've begun to hollow the end of this little vessel. And I've used two tools so far, and I've been using the drill and pull method. So first I just used my, it's not regular, this is my 3/8 inch spindle gouge, and I've sharpened it in the same way that Mark Soleil sharpens his for what we call slicing cuts. I get the whole shoulder out of the way here, and so I'm just working with the sharp edge of the blade. And drill and pull is exactly that. You push the tip of the blade in at about 45 degrees and then just pull it out. Well, once you get so deep, the way that that's sharpened isn't quite effective enough. So this is the same thing, except I've got a much steeper angle on the tip here. So that steeper angle lets me get in a little bit deeper and get a cleaner cut. Now this is Ambrosia maple, which means you can see the spalting. It's from a tree that was killed by the Ambrosia beetle. So this is kind of soft. It's dying wood. It's very it's not hard to work, but it is hard to get good, smooth, clean cuts. So there are a couple of different methods I can use to hollow this. The most obvious is to break out the Jacob's chuck and drill with a Forstner bit to a certain depth. And that will clear a lot of wood, but it also creates some issues, especially when you have wood this soft. The one drawback to the Jacob's chuck is heat. It creates a lot of heat, so you have to slow your lathe way down. It's usually best to change your power band if you've got different belts so that you are using more torque. But it creates heat, and heat in wood this soft can create expansion, can create cracking, can blow your piece apart. Jacob's chuck is definitely not one of my favorite ways to do this. You see I've got some torn grain here I'm seeing, so I'm going to have to come back and clean this up a little before I hollow any more. Roughly 1/8 of an inch thick walls, and that's probably what I want to try to keep. There are carbide tools, and I'll show you some of the bits. This is called a carbide roughing bit, and it's square, and this will hog out a lot of material very fast. This is called a finishing bit. It won't remove material quite as fast, and it leaves a little bit of a smoother finish to it. This is a swan neck hollowing tool, and that's made to get around the inside corners. You can see the back of the neck is hitting, and that's not going to be very effective. Carbide is pretty good up to a point. And here's what I'm going to tell you about carbide. It works okay for hollowing. It's not the best hollowing tool, but it's not the worst hollowing tool. Here's the problem with carbide tools. I'll show you my handle. So this is the detail bit, and I'll show you my handle. My handle's 12 inches long, okay? So the deeper you get into a vessel, say 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, the less leverage you have. And that's the big drawback to hollowing with this style of carbide tool. The further over the edge of the tool rest you get, the less mechanical advantage you get. Now you can counter that in some ways. There are devices that will hold the carbide in the in a tool rest, like 3 rollers. It'll pry it in there, and that works really well. It holds it steady. There are devices that's in a whole arm that you just clamps down on your lathe bed, and you're moving a whole arm, and that's really gives you a lot of mechanical advantage. But those are expensive. Another thing you can do that is difficult, and if you don't have very strong wrist strength, I really don't recommend it, is you can lay the handle on your forearm and use your forearm to help counterbalance. The problem is if you do get a catch, that's going to kick up, slide past your arm, and it's going to be catastrophic. It can go right out the side of your vessel. So it's not the most recommended way. It is a method you can use, but it's not the best method. So for the lower end of expensive hollowing tools that I have found that actually do a very good job and give you a lot of control and a lot of mechanical advantage, the one-way termite is one of the best tools I've found so far for working off the end of the tool rest, is for hanging out over here. Now you've got 16 inches of handle back behind here, a lot of weight, a lot of leverage, and this tool has to start working at a little bit more than an inch and a half over the tool rest just to begin with, because of the screw that holds this hollowing bit in. This is high-speed steel. It is a ring carving device, and this I have found gives me the most control and the least and the most mechanical advantage for this style of hollowing without getting into the more expensive mounting brackets and systems. This is a very controllable tool. If the mouth of this was a little bit wider, another advantage I could give myself is to use my box rest. This is for turning wooden boxes, but it works really well on hollow forms if the mouth is wide enough, because you can extend the end of your rest into the hollow form, giving yourself more leverage. The whole trick about hollowing is what you're doing is working with leverage. How much of the tool is hanging over the tool rest, and how much of your mechanical advantage does that remove? You remember teeter-totters or seesaws? Remember, if you balance it in the middle, it balances. But if you go too far to one side or the other, you lose balance. You get catches when you're hollowing. When you are at a disadvantage mechanically, you lose balance, and that tip of the tool, the cutting edge of the tool, tries to naturally, just with gravity, get away from you. Then combine in catching on the tool, or on the piece that's mechanically trying to take it down as well, and you're ending up with a lot of difficulty. So the longer the handle you have back here, the more mechanical advantage you have. You see these bowl turners with these huge long handles. Well, when they've got 20 inches of handle out here, they can hang the end of their tool 6 or 8 inches over the edge of the tool rest, because they still maintain mechanical advantage. I don't have that much room, especially, I don't need 20 inches of tool hanging out here with this little 4.5, 5 inch deep vase or vessel. So that's just counterproductive, and I'm just getting myself tired waving around all this tool. So again, from my experience with the tools that I've had available to me, this is probably one of the most effective and safest tools. It has its drawbacks. First of all, it is a ring. You cut with this edge, so it's over, and you're drawing it up and in. You cut with this edge, and it pushes the shavings out the back. The back is a little bit wider than the front, you can see here, and that works for the most part, but it still has a tendency to ball up and pack up and fill that. So you have to pull it out and clear it frequently. Sharpening it is not easy, but you can do it. It comes with a little jig with a little sharpening stone, and you're supposed to use your router. I don't have a working router, so I use my Dremel. It can be sharpened, and if you're careful, you can get it done. It's lightweight. It has 2 different sizes. This is the 1/2 inch, I think, or 1/4 inch, and then it's got a smaller one. No, I think this is 3/8, and it has a 1/4 inch. This is the larger one. This is the 3/8. And so I'm going to show you how this works, but this is a very effective little tool. The next tool I would use if I didn't have that would probably be my carbide. Again, the problem is mechanical advantage. Once this carbide gets about that far over the edge with this hollow aluminum handle, I lose a lot of leverage because I don't have a lot of weight in that handle. There are carbide systems that are heavier duty. Easy Wood Tools makes really nice ones. I believe One Way makes a carbide system. Robert Sorby makes a carbide system. But every time you put a name in front of your carbide system, you're increasing the price. So for the price, the most effective tool I've found in the $100 range, the One Way Termite is a really great tool, and I am in no way endorsed by One Way. I'm just telling you that of the tools that I've had the opportunity to use, this is one of the most effective, especially for the range of the price. One of the drawbacks of using the termite is with a narrow mouthed vessel. I cannot get enough angle at the depth I'm at now, which is just about 2 inches, to get the blade to bite. So, even though it's one of my least favorite ways to do this, about the only solution I have with the tools that are available to me is to break out the Jacob's chuck and the Forstner bit and drill so that I can get the tool in there and move it out towards the sides and hollow this vessel. So that's what we're going to have to do. Okay, so I have a 1 inch Forstner bit on an extender. I've got a mark on the shaft here at 4 inches, so 4 inches of depth is about the max for my little vessel here. And I'm going to see how this works. Turning it to low RPM, we're at 350. Really don't want to go much faster than that. I'm going to see how this does. All right, so we're at a depth of 4 inches. Which is about where I need it to be. So we can actually get the termite in there, cut on the side, and hollow out little biting cuts out to the sides to get this nice and hollow. Okay, so hollowing, going to shoot this slip up a little bit, and I've got this really soft section right here of heartwood. So I'm going to take a couple very light passes with the spindle gouge and see if I can clean that up. If I can't, we're going to just shorten it a little bit. that's still tearing. Let me sharpen and try again and see if I can get that clean. But you can see on the inside how chewed up that is. That's pretty hairy. Not sure we're going to be able to fix that. We might have to take it down about that far. Okay, I'm not sure if this is coming across on camera or not, but even with super sharp tool, I'm still getting a little, this is just so soft, I can probably stick my fingernail in there and dig it out. So what I'm going to do is get some myelin cellulose sanding sealer and kind of butter this up with some sanding sealer. That should stiffen the grain enough that I can get a nice slice and stop tearing it. I haven't been using this sanding sealer very much, or any sanding sealer, because I've been doing a lot of for-use pieces, food-containing vessels and things, and I don't want to put any chemicals on those, but this is definitely a decorative piece, not a food-bearing piece, so it's okay. Put a little chemical magic on here, get a little persuasion into that grain, see if I can keep that to hold up. It also gives us a preview of how gorgeous the colors are going to be. Wow. Again, I'm going to take some very light passes here. I'm going to see if I can convince that to slice rather than just chip it out. But it's very, very soft. And spalting is the tree dies and then it begins to rot, and that's how you get spalting. And this is no exception. Let's see if we can get this just a very, very light pass. Maybe that sanding sealer will bolster that grain just enough to hold. If not, we'll just shorten it a little bit. That might do it. Let's start with some 180 grit because of the kind of the shape of what's going on up here on the edge. I could probably get away with sanding at 220, but I'm okay with going up to 180 to start with and see what we can do with this piece. And we want to salvage as much of this wood as possible. It's really quite beautiful. Now that the hollowing is done and the bulk of the sanding is done, before I put abrasive paste on this, I'm going to go ahead and pare this down a little and just start getting it out of the way. Then I'm going to hit this with Brad's Workbench abrasive paste, sanding paste, and the Brad's Workbench tongue wax, which needs to sit for about a half an hour so that the tongue oil can draw into the wood, and then you just buff it with a paper towel or a Quad Zero white 3M pad to get that wax to shine. But let's get this bulk out of the way here so that we get a clean finish on the base of the piece. And I intentionally left myself about 3/8 of an inch on the inside of the bottom so that I can undercut this little vessel. Bulk right now. So that I can come up underneath. And let's take a look real quick. Do we want a pedestal here? No, I think I'm going to stick with my initial design. which does not include a screw back. My bad, I approached that with my tool the wrong way. We'll do a little more sanding, obviously. Okay, so we're slightly undercut. I'm going to remove a little bit more, but not too much. A little bit. Let me get a straight edge. I don't feel like I'm quite undercut enough. Yeah, I'm a little raised in the middle, so I'm going to come back and undercut that a tiny bit more. There we go. That'll ensure that if it does misshape a little, it will stay flat on the surface. So let's sand this little hip. We're up through 400. We'll only take a few seconds. This is Brad's workbench sanding paste. Sorry about the air compressor. That's the best way to keep the chips out of your way when you're hollowing a hollow form. At least the best way I've found is to hit it with your compressor, blow that air out. But it's loud. So we just work that sanding paste in. You can feel it start to grab. Then I start at a low speed with the wet part of the paper towel. And we are again just working it in a little bit around the corner. We're not terribly concerned about the inside. This is to look at, not to pick up and fondle. I could spend hours and hours trying to make the inside perfect through that little 1 1/4 inch opening and make myself crazy. But at the end of the day, that's time spent that nobody will ever notice. So we kick up the speed a little, we flip this to a clean part of the paper towel, and you can see it's removing material. So you do that repeatedly. Kick up the speed, clean part of the paper towel. Still removing material, clean part of the paper towel. We'll kick the speed up a little bit more. In my experience, using this method with Brad's workbench sanding paste, by the time you reach 1000 RPM, you're finished removing material. It's done its job. So, turn this inside out, clean part of the paper towel again, kick it up to 1000. That's pretty good. I don't think you're going to find a much finer finish, especially on such soft wood. This maple is pretty far gone. So, that is the sanding paste, and this is the finishing process. First step, which is just to rub it in. Using the Brad's Workbench tongue wax finish. And I'm just going to put a nice juicy coat on. I like to put this on heavy. I use it heavier than Brad himself does. That's just my preference. I like to make sure I've got plenty of tongue oil on there and plenty of wax. So then, after you put it on, you walk away. Leave it for about a half an hour. You can leave it all the way up to overnight. What you're doing is allowing the tongue oil in the finish to soak into the wood. It begins to polymerize. When you come back and buff it, again, you can just use a paper towel. You can use a white 3M abrasive pad, which is not abrasive, it's a buffing pad, to get it in there. And what you're doing is just heating that wax up, getting it to start to melt, and that forms a protective coat. That wax is beeswax and carnauba wax combination, and that carnauba wax is also used on bowling alleys. It is a very good finish. It's a very hard finish, and it gives you a nice satin sheen to it. I just love the sheen that I get from Brad's Workbench products. So we'll be back in about a half an hour or so. Buff that in, part it off, and I'll show you the final piece. All right, so this has been sitting long enough for me to go catch a shower and eat dinner. And I'm just going to, I can use a paper towel, or like I was saying earlier in the video, you can buff this in with the white 3M pad. It's a little dirty, but it's fine. Now, this is a friction process. Remember, this is a combination of tongue oil, beeswax, and carnauba wax, and what we need to do is get this wax covering hot enough that it will melt and give us a nice even finish. So I'm going to kick up to about 1199 RPM. I'm going to start here, and I'm going to hold it until I see it start to shine, and then I'm just going to bring that shine slowly all the way up the piece. A little on the inside lip there, and bring it back. We're just buffing that wax, warming it up. It is a friction process to melt the wax a little, and that gives us our nice satin sheen. Look at that gorgeous, gorgeous finish. It really doesn't get much prettier than that. Now, we'll part this off, and I'll do a little sanding and stuff off camera and finish the piece. All right, a little sanding. All right, there you have it. A precious little Ambrosia maple twig vase, hollow form, vessel, whatever you want to call it. It's really a piece to look at, not a piece to use. We'll take the laser to it and put my logo on the base. Sits nice and flat, really a fun little piece. I also wanted to mention, it is off the lathe. How am I going to finish this bottom? Before I do the laser, what I'm going to do is put a nice coat of Brad's Workbench Tongue Honey, which is a more fluid version of the tongue wax. It's still the same ingredients: pure tongue oil, beeswax, and carnauba wax. Put it on, same thing, put it on, leave it for about half an hour or so, and then just hand buff it. And it gives you a very, very nice, very smooth satin finish, just like the tongue wax does. So, hope you enjoyed this. Remember, just one more pass means put the bowl gouge down. I would like to encourage you, if you want to support the channel, but you can't necessarily afford my work, would you consider buying me a cup of coffee? Go to coffee.com/watai_wood, and for the price of a cup of coffee, just a little tip, if you will, you can help me get more tools, get more supplies, and keep doing this. I appreciate your time, appreciate your patience as I work through this project, and remember too, pretty much anything you see me turn here on the channel, you can find on my website at wataiwoodturning.com.